Few things in a movie can get me more pumped up than a good walking scene. There's always this build-up, this anticipation, this sensation of holding your breath for an ass beating that you're getting first row seats to. And, if I'm being honest with you, sometimes I remember the walking scenes a lot better than everything else in the movie that happens afterwards. But it's usually too late by that point. The damage has already been done. I will now forever remember this movie for something besides its bizarre 90s tie-in McDonald's ads.
Imagine you're on an asteroid the size of Texas. The bad news? You're on a collision course with Earth.
We're on a collision course with Earth! Ah!
The good news? You got some McDonald's fries.
Some of the most memorable movie walks that come to my mind tend to be alongside a horizontal plane as our characters walk from one end of the frame to the other. Whenever I see this particular shot, I always feel like I'm a bystander watching these characters walk right by me. Throw in a camera that tracks alongside the characters, and we're now walking with them, joining them for the ride. This horizontal movement always excites me in superhero movies because we get a tangible grasp on how inhumanly fast the subject is. As simple as it is, I especially love this one sequence in Infinity War where Captain America and Black Panther start off leading the Wakandan army before outpacing them. At this point, we're already 19 movies into the Marvel franchise and we don't need any more exposition on how strong these characters are or how they got their powers. The camera tells us all we need to know by following Steve Rogers and T'Challa as they charge into battle and leave behind their Wakandan allies. Without any words, we are reminded that our heroes are fearless, lightning fast, and pumped full of experimental supplements. But, you ever notice that our heroes typically move to the right? And characters who walk left? They tend to be on the more villainous, or at the very least, morally questionable side of things. It's not exactly a concept that's unique to movies. It's a visual tradition with roots in theater. Italian morality plays during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance were often performed by a single pantomime who would portray multiple roles. To signify who the pantomime was portraying at the moment, he would appear stage right to indicate playing the protagonist, and would show up on stage left to play the antagonist, usually personifications of vices, diseases, temptations, and even the devil.
Exit! Stage right!
I think the concept of stage left and stage right would eventually be muddled with time and language barriers, but in any case, a Roman pantomime would have understood these directions as destro and sinistra, right and left. In both Latin and Italian, sinistra simply means on the left side. If that looks like the word sinister to you, it's not a coincidence. Humans have spent a very long time associating the left side with evil and the right with, righteousness. If that sounds a little too silly and obvious, well, we're not exactly a very subtle species. Remember that for a huge part of human history, we thought left-handed people were evil. Maybe it has something to do with the majority of humans being right-handed. Maybe it's related to the fact that many cultures around the world read from left to right. But in any case, the concept of danger and the left side have been connected for a long, long time. In fact, the Mustang logo was actually considered a gamble because the horse is facing the left. Supposedly, this helped appeal to the American counterculture with the message of going against the grain, but I'm willing to bet that movies like Bullitt probably had more of an influence on consumers than the direction of the Mustang logo. Now that I think about it, there's a lot of logos and mascots that face the left but don't really have a sense of good or evil attached to them. All this is to say that left-right movements don't apply to every single thing you'll ever see in this world, or even in movies and TV. But generally, if a cinematographer wants to convey a sense of good or evil in a simple way without any words, they'll typically follow this rule. Good guys move right, bad guys move left. Going back to tracking shots, the famous single-shot hallway scene from Park Chan-Wook's Oldboy is one of my absolute favorites. It's so simple yet conveys so much at the same time. Our protagonist, Odesu, is just some guy. He's not Captain America, he's not Black Panther, so the camera tracks alongside him as he plows through these goons very slowly in a very narrow hallway. It's a flat take with no cut, so we get a very clear sense of the odds Odesu has to go against to reach the end of the hole. It makes me think of a 90s beat-em-up game, or maybe even an ant farm. You keep watching, waiting to see what's going to happen to Odesu at the end of the hole, and then at some point, Odesu just gets stabbed. The camera lingers on him for a bit, then he gets up and moves left. And not only does he keep facing left, but he completely beats the shit out of all these goons. So what's the deal? Odesu's the main character of Oldboy, but is he a hero or not? That's one of the many reasons why this movie is one of my favorites. I've always loved movies. I've always wanted to make movies. But seeing Oldboy almost 20 years ago was the first time I really started to care about how much work a camera does to help tell a story. Park Chan-Wook is what I call an intentional filmmaker. His movies are not lightning in a bottle. They're handcrafted, meticulous, personal. Nothing less than what you'd expect from someone who wanted to make movies because of seeing Vertigo at a young age. I've always felt that if you watch enough of a filmmaker's movies, you end up recognizing their visual handwriting, so to speak. Park Chan-Wook's style gives his characters and twists such personality and immediacy, as if he was the kind of energetic storyteller that would wave his hands around a lot while excitedly telling you about some wild shit he saw. So much of this magnetic filmmaking is due to the eye of Park's longtime cinematographer, Jun Jun-hoon. Their 7 or so movies together are some of my favorite visual feasts, and I think a lot of this is owed to Jung's philosophy regarding filmmaking. Study loads of different things other than technical filmmaking skills, like cinematography and directing. Instead, study architecture or philosophy or dating. That way, Jung insists, your technical filmmaking skills will be naturally absorbed into your other pursuits. I know next to nothing about Park Chan-Wook and Jung Jun-hoon's working relationship, but their combined filmmaking vision makes me think that they have long conversations about human nature and moral conundrums. So let's go back. Let's go back to before Oldboy and before the ideas of left, right, and the devil, and good guys and bad guys, and let's just go back to the idea of walking scenes being something that grabs my attention in movies. If you haven't seen Oldboy yet, Odesu really is just some guy. But he's one fueled by a thirst for vengeance, and like a lot of other Korean revenge flicks, revenge in Oldboy is portrayed as corrupting and consuming. Maybe it's a lot like the dark side of the Force, where the anger and hatred that stem from vengeance fill you with immediate strength at the cost of your morality and sanity. It pushes Odesu forward, constantly moving the plot into unexpected directions as he goes to desperate and impulsive measures to find vengeance. Perhaps you could say that Oldboy is a morality play of sorts. Does Odesu's path to revenge go too far? Do power dynamics shift? We start off rooting for him because his motivations are sympathetic. But as the movie progresses, we start to wonder if Odesu actually is a piece of shit. He's a protagonist, but is he a hero? Or is he more like the devil of his own morality play? In Oldboy, nothing is as it seems. Characters we're supposed to relate to end up doing desperate or depraved things. And characters that are supposed to be the villains feel sad and sympathetic. I don't think it's a stretch to interpret many of the character movements and camera work as visual cues on their moral leaning or emotional states. The audience frequently alternates between sympathizing and questioning Odesu's motivations, and the camera always seems to be doing the same. There's a lot of other interesting left-right motions in Oldboy that I still think about almost 20 years later. And they all seem to be indicating how righteous, how justified, how cruel, how angry a character's feeling at the moment. I suppose it's all up to each viewer's interpretations what these mean, all these horizontal movements left and right. Oh no. Well, if you haven't seen this movie yet, it's one of my personal favorites. I don't want to give the plot away even though it's a 20-year-old movie, but when you do get around to watching it, maybe keep this in mind. The good guy always moves right, but is the main character always the good guy? It really depends on what kind of story you want to tell, but if you need some kind of inspiration on how to make your character seem more complicated and maybe sinister, Oldboy is an exciting morality play that goes against your visual expectations.